2.4 completing the square. We had already begun to talk about this, the square roots, the plus and minus, and that middle section. When we have x squared equals 15, the way to do the opposite of a square is to take the square root. And whenever you take the square root of a variable, we don't know if it was positive or negative, so we put plus or minus. So in our problem here, x squared equals 15. To get rid of the square, you take the square root. We do not know the square root of 15, so it's plus or minus the square root of 15. We have the problem 4x squared plus 11 equals 59. What would you think our first step's going to be? Subtract 11. It's just like we did before. Subtract 11, subtract 11. For x squared, what's 59 minus 11? 48. Now what's your next step? Divide by 4. Now you're left with x squared equals 12. Now, someone shouted out square root ahead of time. You can't take the square root until you have something squared equals. If you do the square root beforehand, there's a chance you're going to do something wrong. So to get rid of a square, you take the square root. Square root, square root. X equals, we took the square root of a variable, so plus or minus the square root of 12. I will accept that answer. I would like you to try to take it further and try to simplify this. So we talked about these perfect square numbers. 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, and so on. Do any of those numbers go into 12? 4 does. So I'm going to take plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. 4 times 3 is 12. What's the square root of 4? So plus or minus 2 square root of 3.
Wait, you'll be okay with that, but you want to...
This answer is okay. I would like you to try this one. If you get it correct, I give you a bonus. For this problem here, I have x squared plus 12x plus 36 equals 28. Now looking at what we have on the left-hand side of the equation, what can you tell me about x squared plus 12x plus 36? Anything in common here? No, nothing in common between all of them. Can I take the square root? X. Can I take the square root? 6. Let's see, 6 times x is 6x. Double it, you get 12x. That's what we have here. It's x plus 6 squared equals 28. How do I get rid of that square? Square root. So I'm going to take the square root, square root. The square root gets rid of that entire square. So I have x plus 6 equals plus or minus the square root of 28. I don't know the square root of 28. Now I subtract the 6 over. This is one part where you got to be careful. Negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 28. That negative 6 does not go into the radical. Yes?
You can't do that before you do all the square roots.
No, you have to do this. the square root before you start moving stuff over. You can't break out of a parenthesis that has parentheses and a root. Now, I'm going to try to think, is there any of those special numbers that go into a 28? 4. So I have negative 6 plus or minus square root of 4 times the square root of 7. 4 times 7 is 28. Plus or minus 2 square root of 7. That would give you a point of bonus. This one right here will be acceptable for now. For completing the square, we're going to create perfect squares. So if I have 6x plus, or sorry, x squared plus 6x, and I want to make it a complete perfect square, I need to find out what number goes on the end. If we have x squared plus 6x plus something, I want to find out what this something would have been. Now, if I factored it, how do you get this number? How did you get x? You took the square root to go that way, right? Now, I don't have this number here, and I don't have this number here, but I do have this middle term. How do you find the middle term normally? When I had this, x plus 6, how did you get, you doubled it. 6 times x is 6x, you double it. So to work backwards, what would you do? You would take this and cut it in half. What's half of this? The 3 would go here. This plus means that's plus. How would I go this way and find this missing number? If I go from the whole equation to factored, I take square root. So what would I do to go backwards? Square it. So what's the square of 3? 9. That number there makes it a perfect square. I know you see it up here too. I thought if I did it down here, it might help you understand it a little bit better. Some people see these and they can instantly tell me what the end number is. That's fine. But we're going to complete the square. I'm going to go through the entire process again. I have x squared minus 14x plus something. I want to find out what that something on the end would be, and then find out what would be factored. What's this number? X. That just comes right from here. What number is going to go here? Where'd you get that from?
Half of 14.
Half of 14. So in other words, what you're doing is you're taking your b value and cutting it in half. That is what goes in the parentheses, right? If you took your b value, cut it in half, that's what goes in the parentheses. How do you get this sign? The sign is this one here, sign is that one there. How do I move back up to get this number? You square it, so you get 49. This is what you pretty much just told me. b over 2 squared. This number will tell me what goes on the inside here. This whole thing will tell me the 49. Here's this one. X squared plus 9x plus something. If I have b over 2 squared, what's your b? 9. All I did was put my 9 in. You know 9 over 2. It's a fraction, decimal, right? So I'll leave it. What's 9 squared? 9 squared is 81. 2 squared is. So the number that goes on the end here is 81 fourths. The factored form would be x plus 9 halves squared. This number that's in the parentheses is always the number that goes inside the parentheses there. The number here that you get after you square it is always the number that goes in the tail end. When we actually get to solving completing the square problems, just like when we factored, you need to look. Could you factor anything out? Was it special? Then you try to factor by hand. What completing the square is, it's another way to get your zeros. The steps you need to do. Now, some teacher might tell you a different way. Doesn't mean they're wrong, I'm wrong. There's different ways to do these problems. The way I'm showing you here to set it up sort of makes it less likely you're going to make a mistake. So if I move all my variables to the left and all my constants to the right, what are constants? Numbers without variables. They're just numbers by themselves. If a number is attached to the variable, that has to stay attached. You just can't get rid of it. The next step, divide. What this means, your A value has to be 1. If A is not 1, you have to make it 1. So you divide everything by it. I'll show you an example later. And what we're going to do is complete the square, what we just finished doing in those examples. But an equation is like one big giant scale. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And then we're going to go through and solve like we did in those previous problems. So just write this down. That way you have step-by-step instructions in your notes. I have the problem x squared equals 12x minus 20. When you complete the square, move all the variables to one side, all the constants to the other. So the 12x needs to move. How do I move it? Subtract it. So x squared minus 12x equals negative 20. Our second step is look at our A. What is our A value? 1. So we're good. We can move on. Step 3, that's talking about the B over 2A, or the B over A. Sorry, B over 2. B over 2 squared. What is your B? Negative 12 divided by 2 squared. What's negative 12 divided by 2? Negative 6 squared is 36. So what you have is x squared minus 12x plus 36 equals negative 20 plus 36. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to another. Now I'm going to factor. X, what goes in here? Negative 6. You got to think if we're going to do this, it's square root, take the sign. Equals, what's negative 20 plus 36? 16. Now I have x minus 6 squared equals 16. In order to get rid of the square, square root. Square root, square root. The square root gets rid of the square. X minus 6 equals. What's the square root of 16? Okay, so we know this one, plus or minus 4. It is always plus or minus when we take the square root with a variable. Then bring the 6 over. X equals 6 plus or minus 4. Now for this problem here, I actually know what 4 is, or the square root of 16 is. So I can do some math. What is 6 plus 4? 10. What is 6 minus 4? 2. Your answers are 2 and 10. What this is saying is if I put it in my calculator, x squared, I got to put it all on one side, minus 12x plus 20. I have one that crosses here at 2, and the other one crosses here at 10. Those are my two zeros. 6 plus 4, 6 minus 4. That's what the plus minus means. It means you have two problems. You really have 6 plus 4, and you really have 6 minus 4. Bless you. The only reason, usually we just left it like that because I didn't know the square root of that number. This one I knew the square root of 16. Now, if I would have moved everything to one side, you get x squared minus 12x plus 20. And we try to do the old factoring. I need two numbers that multiply to get me 20, but add together get me 12. X minus 10, x minus 2. My zeros are 10 and 2. It's the same thing. That is a lot easier. But not every single one factoring will work. You knew sometimes factoring was difficult, right? If you can do it quickly, factoring's quicker. If not, I go right to completing the square. That's my next step. I don't sit there for an hour trying to factor what goes into this and this and this. I just go down the line. Can I factor quickly? No. Next step. This is just another method to solve problems. Here's this one.
Oh, wait, where did you get 16 from?
There's just one piece of housekeeping stuff I want to do personally. There's one little thing I like to have. I like to have my A first, my B second. All I've done is rearranged. So the x squared was first, the x was second. You're not wrong if you don't do this. Now, second step, what is our A value? 3. It has to be a 1 there. So I need to get rid of those 3's. So you need to, I keep hearing it, divide by 3. You're going to divide each term by 3. You always can. Sometimes you have nasty fractions, though. If it would have been a 5 out front, it would have been 18/5. It's a fraction you have to deal with. So let's see, gone. So I have x squared. 18 divided by 6, or 3 is 6, equals 15. And all I'm really going to do right here is do plus something equals 15 plus something. By putting that plus and then the line, plus and a line, what you're doing is you're creating, you know that you're going to have to put numbers there. Now we got to find out what this number is. Okay, I'm going to take, what's my B value? 6 over 2 squared. Oh, it's always this. What's 6 over 2? 3 squared is 9. I know that you can look at this and automatically say what it is in your head. There's a reason why I'm putting these numbers. This number here will go here and here. My next step, when I have to factor this, it is going to be x, that's where this goes, plus 3. If you think about it, square root's x, square root's 3. What's 15 and 9? 24. take the square root. X plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 24. We've got to move the 3 over. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 24. I will accept that as an answer. Now, once you have that, let's see, can I take it further? Looking at 24, do any of those special numbers go in? Remember the special numbers, 4, 9, 16, 25. 4 goes in there. 4 times 6. So I have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 6. Because 4 times 6 is 24. The square root of 4 is 2. So negative 3 plus or minus 2. Let me write again. 2 times the square root of 6. Gets you a bonus point. If you do this, tell me this is your answer, and then right after it, do this one. If you're going to do it on your answer line, just put this and then an equals. I'll look at this. Did you get it right? Good. Did you get this wrong? No. It's not going to dock you anything. If you get it right, then I'll just go plus 1. Those plus 1s can add up.